we're continuing in the introduction of the Srimad Bhagawad Gita. And we begin by we're continuing in the introduction of the Srimad Bhagawad Gita. So it says, the Supreme Conscious Ishvara is similar to a living entity in this way. Both the consciousness of the Lord and that of the living entity are transcendental. It is not that the consciousness is generated by the association of matter. That is a mistaken idea. The theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita. Consciousness may be pervertedly reflected by the covering of material circumstances, just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be a certain color, but the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. Lord Krishna says, Maya Dakshina Prakriti, when he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. If he were so affected, he would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters, as he does in the Bhagavad Gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from materially contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Our consciousness at the present moment, however, is materially contaminated. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that we have to purify this materially contaminated consciousness. In pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of Ishvara, or Krishna, and that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified. And purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point, our consciousness is contaminated. When we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because that's a very significant point. When I joined Krishna consciousness, I had a false ego. And I didn't even realize it. And when someone would say, where you come from? And I'd say, well, I come, my family comes from Armenia and this thing and that thing. But actually, where do I come from? I come originally from the spiritual world, from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I was identifying myself from the circumstantial family, but that's not where I really come from. That's not where any of us really come from. We really come from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's difficult sometimes to stop identifying ourselves from the bodily platform. And most people do that. They identify themselves with the body and the family that they come from and so forth, and the culture that they come from. So, Prabhupada says here, false consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who's absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life. And Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalists. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Well, a long time ago in Paris, there's this one girl. She came from a Jewish family, and she got initiated. She's a nice lady. But she would always identify herself as being Jewish. Just like I was identifying myself as being Armenian. So this is false ego. That's not who we really are. We're all the children of Krishna. And we're all meant to serve Krishna. If we come from Krishna, then we're meant to serve Krishna. Krishna is our father. Then we're meant to serve Krishna. So it's very difficult sometimes to stop identifying ourselves based on the temporary bodily identification. But at one point, it's got to stop. We have to understand that I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. So here Prabhupada says, one who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Well, everybody believes that I am this body. I'm sure there's plenty of devotees still identifying with their body and not with their soul, which has nothing to do with the body. Mukti or liberation means freedom from material consciousness. So in other words, mukti is not you all of a sudden you have these have two more arms and wings, so you can fly through the air, and you achieve liberation. That's not mukti. Liberation is when you no longer identify with the body, but you identify with the soul, and you engage in the devotional service to the Lord. Now you're still in the material world, but because you identify yourself as a devotee, and your real purpose in life is to engage in devotional service, you're no longer, let's say, in the material world. Your consciousness has changed from mundane consciousness to transcendental consciousness. Everything depends on the consciousness. So the dog is connected to its body, and its consciousness is just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The devotee who identifies not with the body, but as being the eternal servant of Krishna, engages in devotional service, and is not materially affected anymore. So material affection, being affected materially is when it still has desire for sense gratification, and one identifies himself or herself in a particular way based on the body, and one has friends and enemies based on the body again, and so forth. So it's very important. The first thing we should learn when we come to Krishna consciousness is, I am not this body. And sometimes it takes a long time to realize that I am not this body. But factually, what body are we talking about? We've had many bodies in this lifetime, right? You start out microscopically as a little sperm, and it's microscopic. In other words, you cannot see the sperm with your eyes. You need a microscope to see it. And that's our first body in this lifetime. And it's material, but in some mysterious way, that little sperm has all the information to form a complete body in that tiny microscopic little sperm. It's unbelievable that such amount of information can be in such a small microscopic creature that you can't see with the raw eye. You need a microscope to see it. And then when it connects with the ovum, it begins to grow. And eventually it produces a complete body. And then when it's pushed out of the womb, it's a baby. The baby has everything, arms, legs, eyes, ears, nose. It's just a miracle. And all that information, all that, let's say, technical information was carried by the little sperm, which was microscopic. We have to think about these things. And you see there's a lot of mysterious things that are happening that we take for granted, but we shouldn't. And it's all controlled by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, one who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also, the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hit vanyata rupam swarupena vyapastita. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. Now, what is the contaminated consciousness of this material world? It's identifying with the body. As soon as you identify with the body, immediately, without even trying, you get friends and enemies. So, and then that can fluctuate in life, the friends and enemies. Just like we see now with so many college kids, they're supporting Palestine, and they are rioting sometimes, and they're very passionate about it. They're identifying themselves. In other words, I am Palestinian, although they're not born in Palestine, but they want to support the Palestinians. So that type of passionate identification is based on the false ego. Now, is it wrong to do that? Well, let's put it like this. There are Israelis, there are Palestinians, there are Russians, there are Ukrainians. They're all identifying with the body, and they're all killing each other. So there must be something wrong about that. Why should they kill each other when actually they're all spirit souls, and they all come originally from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So instead of killing each other, they should be friends, because we're all children of Krishna. We're all in one family. The Achyuta Gotra. We're all part of one family, Krishna or Achyuta's family. So this type of false identification is what leads to wars and murdering and killing and bombs and all those things. And then falsely identifying, oh, this is, Israel, this is Palestine. So the Palestinians say that the land that the Israelis are living on is Palestine, and it's Palestinians, and then the Israelis say that it's our land. So they're fighting over land. Whereas, if you go back in the history, they were living both on the land without fighting. You go back more than 70 years ago, 75, 80 years ago. There were Palestinians, there were Turks, there were Jews, there were Armenians, there were all these different people were living on the land that they're all fighting for right now. And they were living together, there was no other, at least long ago, there was no real fighting. But it all started when, because of Zionism, they started to fight. Why? Well, they blame it, and they don't blame it. They base it on some statements in the Bible that seems to say that the land of what's called Israel more or less belongs to the Jews. And is that true? Well, no, it's not really true. But there is a few statements like that in the Bible, and because of that, they're insisting that they should have that land. And on the other hand, you have the Palestinians that say, no, this is our land. And they're killing each other. Whereas they're all related because the father of the Jews and the original father of the Palestinians was Abraham. Therefore, they have the same original ancestry. They're related, but they're killing each other. And they're fighting over the same land that they used to live together with without fighting. So what has changed over time? It's false, let's say, narrative or the false identification or the misleading of so-called politicians. And because of that, people suffer unnecessarily. And this happens all over the world. It happens also in Africa. In Africa, sometimes you have different tribes, of the Africans. They're both black, and they're living side by side. But one is from one tribe and the other is from another tribe, and they start killing each other. Where, you'd think, well, okay, well, maybe there were some white people and they were killing some blacks, and the blacks are trying to kill the white people. No, these are black people killing black people. And they have different family trees, and they don't, for some reason or other, they get into fights and start killing each other. So this whole bodily identification is very, very bad for me. And because of that, so many people suffer unnecessarily. So here it says, in pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of Ishvara, meaning will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified. And purified activities are called bhakti. Bhakti means devotion and love for Krishna. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point, our consciousness is contaminated. Very great statement by Prabhupada. Yeah, we're all contaminated. We're all contaminated with bodily identification and all kinds of material desires. And when we have competition, there can be hatred, there can be murder, there can be so many things because of competing. And most wars are all about sense gratification, competing between two different types of sense gratification. So the Israelis, they have their sense gratification, Palestinians have their sense gratifications, and the Kashmiris have their, and the Muslims have their sense gratification, and the Hindus have their sense gratification, and they're all fighting and killing each other based on their particular type of sense gratification. So it's a very sad thing that we're seeing happening today. So it says, it is not that we have to cease all activity. Rather, our activities are to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person has a poor fund of knowledge. With a poor fund of knowledge, does not know that the activities of the devotee or the Lord, of the Lord, or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point, our consciousness is contaminated. When we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. Bhagawad Gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life. And Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendental. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. So you see, Prabhupada is going over the point over and over again. That means this is most important. When something is repeated at least 3 times or 4 times or 5, that means it's most important. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In Srimad Bhagavatam also, the definition of liberation is given. Mukti Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. So mukti is not, you grow some wings and you start flying up into the air and it's some kind of, liberated person. No, it's a question of consciousness. How you are perceiving things. If you perceive things on the basis of devotional service and relationship to Krishna and pleasing Krishna by our activities, that's spiritual consciousness. And if we perceive things, as based on the bodily conception of life, then you identify some people as friends and other people as enemies. And horrible things can happen when you identify like that. So it's all about this consciousness. Our consciousness should be that I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. That's who I am. And it's true. We're all the eternal servants of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we identify like that, we won't get into all these wars and polemics and all the unsavory things that people get themselves into, arguing, fighting, jealousy, anger, all that stuff. All the instructions of Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness And therefore, we find at the last stage of the Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. So, purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. And how can we learn the instructions of the Lord? We read Bhagavad Gita as it is. That's how we understand the instructions of the Lord. Okay, so Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. So the inferior modes are lust, anger, and greed, or lustiness and ignorance. Also, goodness, mundane goodness, and lust and ignorance. These are the mundane modes. Okay, so this is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. In other words, purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. What is this consciousness? This consciousness is I am. Then, what am I? In contaminated consciousness, I am means I am the Lord of all I survey. I am the enjoyer. The world revolves because every living being thinks that he is the Lord and creator of the material world. Material consciousness has two psychic divisions. One is that I am the creator, and the other is that I am the enjoyer. But actually, the Supreme Lord is both the creator and the enjoyer. And the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is neither the creator nor the enjoyer, but a cooperator. There you go. Very important word, cooperator. We have to cooperate with Lord's plan, not our own plan. Everyone's got their own plan. You know, the communists have their plan, the capitalists have their plan, the Africans have their plan, the Americans have their plan. Everybody's got a plan.
Democrats have their
Huh?
The Democrats have
Democrats have their plan, Republicans have. Everybody's got a plan. But we have to learn to be a cooperator with who? With Krishna, under the tutelage of Krishna. He is the creator and the enjoyed. He is created and the enjoyed. For instance, a part of a machine cooperates with the whole machine. A part of the body cooperates with the whole body. The hands, legs, eyes, and so on are all parts of the body, but they are not actually the enjoyers. The stomach is the enjoyer. The legs move, the hands supply food, the teeth chew, and all parts of the body are engaged in satisfying the stomach because the stomach is the principal factor that nourishes the body's organization. Therefore, everything is given to the stomach. One nourishes the tree by watering its root, and one nourishes the body by feeding the stomach. For if the body is to be kept in a healthy state, then the parts of the body must cooperate to feed the stomach. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer and the creator. And we, as subordinate living beings, are meant to cooperate to satisfy him. This cooperation will actually help us, just as food taken by the stomach will help all other parts of the body. If the fingers of the hand think that they should take the food themselves instead of giving it to the stomach, then they will be frustrated. The central figure of creation and of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord. And the living entities are cooperators. By cooperation, they enjoy. The relation is also like that of the master and the servant. If the master is fully satisfied, then the servant is satisfied. Similarly, the Supreme Lord should be satisfied, although the tendency to become the creator and the tendency to enjoy the material world are there also in the living entities, because these tendencies are there in the Supreme Lord who has created the manifested cosmic world. We shall find, therefore, in this Bhagavad Gita that the complete whole is comprised of the Supreme Controller, the controlled living entities, the cosmic manifestation, eternal time, and karma, or activities. And all of these are explained in this text. All of these taken completely form the complete whole, and the complete whole is called the Supreme Absolute Truth. The complete whole and the complete Absolute Truth are the complete personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. All manifestations are due to his different energies. He is the complete whole. It is also explained in the Gita that impersonal Brahman is also subordinate to the complete Supreme Person, Brahmana hi pratistaham. Okay, so let's stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions anyone would like to, or comments that anyone would like to make?
Any
Hare
question?
Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
So I have this question regarding mind. Why it always misguides us?
What is
Why
it?
mind always misguides us? It
Why
never like
misguided? Well, we're all being tested. Just like when you go to school, you get tests to see whether you understand the subject matters that you've been studying or not. So in the same way, Maya is the tester. She's going to test whether we're Krishna conscious or we're not Krishna conscious. If you pass the test, then you have a successful life, Krishna consciousness. If you don't pass the test, then you get punished, and you learn a lesson by which you can then stop doing the wrong thing and start doing the right thing. So Maya is on our side, meaning on the side of devotees, because devotees always follow Krishna consciousness. So if Maya tries to test us, we pass the test. We're not interested in sense gratification. The test is, are we interested in sense gratification or are we interested in Krishna? That's what the test is. So Maya tests us to see if we're attached to sense gratification rather than Krishna. And if we pass the test, we become successful in our spiritual life. If we don't pass the test, then we can be educated to be able to pass the test in the future. Now, there are people who don't want to be educated. So they keep not passing the test. And their life is very hectic and very horrible in a sense. But we can make mistakes. That's okay. We're not perfect, but we can learn from our mistakes, and then we can pass the test. Just like Haridas Thakur was tested twice. First by a prostitute that was paid, or let's say, she was paid by a person who was envious of Haridas Thakur, and he went to see him in the middle of the night and said, "I want to enjoy with you. I want to please you," etc. He said, "Oh, okay, but you have to wait until I finish my rounds." And she said, "What do you mean that finish your round?" He said, "Well, I made a vow to finish a certain number of rounds. I haven't finished them yet. You can sit right here and I'll finish my rounds, and then I will do whatever you want." But of course, he was chanting over 300,000 times the name of the Lord. It takes like almost 24 hours, like 23 and a half hours. So every time she came like 3 times. She fell asleep while he was trying to finish his rounds. But the third time, she was, she became purified by hearing him chant. And she became somewhat purified. And then she apologized and explained why she was coming to make him fall down. He said, "Look, I knew that, but I wanted to help you." And he did. He blessed her, and she became a devotee. And then he gave her his japa mala and the place where he was chanting and a tulsi plant. And he said, "You just sit here and chant it, and you don't have to worry about eating or anything like that. Krishna will supply everything you want." But first of all, shave your head, go home, give away all the money you earned through prostitution, and come back and wear only a white cloth, and you will not have any problems, I guarantee you. And she listened to him, and she became a very, very serious devotee by his mercy. And then he left and went somewhere else and continued chanting Hare Krishna. So we're all going to be tested. So Maya is the person that tests us to see whether we're interested in sense gratification or we're interested in Krishna. So that's the way we should understand Maya. She's not an evil person. She's actually a very good person. But the job she has is a hard job because she has to see if people are serious about serving Krishna or not serious. So does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Don't be afraid of the test. Just chant Hare Krishna, you'll pass the test.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Haribol.
Any other questions?
So Maharaj, this material conception,
Speak loud.
so the whole paragraph is talking about identifying ourselves with the body is the contaminated consciousness, right, Maharaj? So, and then as devotees, we have to first learn that we are not this body. Theoretically, it makes sense, but application wise, so we still have children, we still have responsibility as a employee of the office, right? So all these things will again make us remind that, okay, you are this, you are that, the material identifications. How can we still get out of that while doing our duty?
By dovetailing everything you do into Krishna consciousness. Dovetailing means you're working hard, you're making money. So some of that money should be used in helping Krishna consciousness advance. You are also you're working very hard to earn money. So you should also help people in your work area by bringing some prasadam for them. You don't tell them it's prasadam. You don't tell them this is offered to God. This one, I don't want that. So you give them some prasadam. And also, by your very good behavior, people will be very happy to associate with you. And they will want to know, what's your secret? You're always kind, you're always working on time, you're always giving your efforts to deliver for the deliverables and everything. And so what's your secret? You always seem to be happy. There's something that we don't know. So now you didn't have to say, well, I want to preach to you. No. Now they're asking you, what is your secret? So now you can tell them it's Krishna and devotional service. So you have to be a patient person. You have to be a very, very, very patient and very, very good person and a giving person where you cook cookies or you cook cakes or pies. And you bring him in and, you don't say, well, I offered this to God. No, I don't want to buy it. You put some magic in it. But if you just act like a normal person, but a very, very exemplary person, people will like you very much. And eventually they'll ask you, so what is your secret? How come you are the way you are? Such a nice person. And you can say, of course, my mother and father were very good. And my religion is very good. They want to say, what religion is that? Okay, they asked you. You didn't have to stop them and say, hey, you want to know about Krishna consciousness? Yeah. So it's your behavior and your patience that the good behavior and patience and kindness eventually gains the respect of people. And once they respect you, and then they begin to trust you, and then they might ask you questions about, how come you're such a good person? What is it that you've done in your life that's led to your good behavior and so forth? And then you can explain Krishna consciousness to them. They want to hear. They want to learn. So therefore, example is better than precept. You can talk, all kinds of philosophy. Most people are not really interested in philosophy, but your example speaks legions to people. You're a good example. So we have to always give a good example that's representative of a genuine devotee. And people will notice it. They will notice it. And they'll be happy to associate with you because of your kindness and gentleness and all that good behavior. I have a question. You have a question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, brother.
So we just discussed about the contaminated consciousness.
The what?
The contaminated consciousness.
Yes,
Contaminated consciousness and the purified consciousness. So as per this paragraph, the contaminated consciousness is where I am, means I am the Lord. Means if our consciousness, if we think that if I am the creator or I am the enjoyer, that's where we call it as contaminated consciousness. And the purified is where we think that Krishna, because Krishna is the creator and enjoyer both, but we are not. But it's little bit, so if we think about it, like we are part and parcel of Krishna, right? So this tendency of creator and enjoyer, since we always give example of the sea, right? Ocean, that the quality of ocean and the drop of the water from the ocean, right? They have same quality, but the quantity wise, they are different. So whatever the qualities in the water in the sea has, same qualities in the drop. Similarly, whatever the qualities in the Krishna has, same qualities. Maybe it's very minute quantity, but the qualities are same. So being an enjoyer and creator, that tendency of Krishna has, that also kind of inherited or whatever into a living being or living entity. So how do we think that I mean, it comes as a natural, like as a living entity, we want to create something because we are part and parcel of Krishna. We also want to do, but we do small things, but that tendency is always there. So why actually it becomes like a contaminated? Why do you call it this contaminated?
Well, this is a good question because Krishna is the supreme Purusha in Judaism. We all come from Krishna. So we also have the tendency to be the enjoyer.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
We have that tendency to be enjoyer. Nowadays, usually, the men are the enjoyer, the women are the property, but nowadays women want to be the enjoyer also. So the men want to be enjoyer, the women want to be enjoyer. Everybody wants to be the enjoyer. So when we dovetail our activities into pleasing Krishna, and Krishna is pleased, and you feel pleased because Krishna is pleased, that means you became a devotee. But if you just please yourself, that's what's called selfishness. And you can lose a lot of friends by being selfish, let alone lose your relationship with Krishna. So it's much better. Now you can say, well, wait a minute, maybe I just want to make my friends happy and please my friends. Well, that's not the same as pleasing Krishna. Because maybe your friends have bad habits, and to please them, you're going to have to, give them do bad habits also. But if you please Krishna, one thing will happen. If you're always trying to do something to please Krishna, the friends that you have who are not, let's say, spiritually inclined, they will leave you. They say, we don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because you're not one of us. But you will also gain friends that are interested in Krishna. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of things that happen when you become uniquely interested in pleasing Krishna. You lose your bad friends and you gain good friends. And you gain the protection of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it has a lot of advantages. Right? And you become much more, let's say, universally friendly because you see the presence of Krishna in the heart of every living entity. So you don't become a person who likes some people and doesn't like some people, because you see that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. So you develop this universal vision of the presence of Krishna in the heart of all living entities, and also in the heart of animals and insects and so forth. You become a different person. You have this universal vision of Krishna. And now your main activity, or all your activity, is based on pleasing Krishna now. And then Krishna takes a special interest in you, makes your life very easy and fun, and you meet good people and good devotees, and after some time you realize you made the right decision, or right away you realize you made the right decision. So you might lose some friends, right? But that's because they don't like what you're doing. They don't like the fact that you're a devotee and you don't eat meat. I mean, when one of my uncles, when he found out I didn't eat meat, boy, he got really upset. Really, really upset. He was angry, tried to force me to eat meat. So, yeah, you will get a whole new set of friends, and maybe lose a previous set of friends because They want, you change your, let's say, uh, identification from being a meat eater and a gambler and so forth to being a devotee who doesn't do those things. So those people that were your friends before and are not willing to change like you did, well, you lose them, but you gain a whole bunch of new friends who have the same culture and desires that you do. So it's not that oh, now I'm all alone and nobody likes me. No. You just change, who you associate with, that's all. So we shouldn't be worried about the possibility of being ostracized. Ostracized means people say, well, if you continue like this, we're not going to talk to you anymore. You're not one of us anymore, and so forth. I mean, has that happened to you? Did you lose your friends by becoming a devotee?
I mean, to some extent, yes, some of the matters, so the friendship is generally, if you always keep talking, be in touch, then they will be friend. But if you stop talking to them because or thinking they're not like-minded, so slowly that, distance comes, and then slowly you lose. I mean, they will stop talking to you.
Well, they'll
Because
stop talking to you because
but they are not enemies. But
you're
they're not
going to
friends.
try and talk Krishna consciousness to them, and they don't want to hear it. You're not forcing them, but every once in a while, every time you're going to see your friends, everything will begin, hello, how are you? What's happening? And they'll say something. You'll say, eventually you'll start trying to say something about Krishna consciousness to them, and they'll turn off. They'll say, well, I don't want to hear this. Has that ever happened to you?
No, not really.
Have you tried to talk about Krishna consciousness to your friends?
Oh, many times,
So
but some people depend upon how close the friend is. Sometimes they, oh, stop. I know this
okay,
everything.
Okay.
If some people say, okay, just listen, because they don't want to say upfront anything, but they just listen. Oh, okay, fine. So that's that kind of. It doesn't mean that if they're close, they say, okay, I don't want to. I have, and literally one friend just say, okay, I know, I'm getting bored now. So that's that kind of feedback also I got one when we talk about it. It depends upon the person we are talking to. It varies.
Well, yeah, it depends on what.
But we definitely stopped going to, let's say, parties. We stopped going to the gatherings, the social gatherings that were part of the previous culture or previous way that we would do things. So definitely that has transformed in the way that we live, right? I mean, are you?
No. I think Maharaj asking if you talk to some friends and that friend got something, right? Not me.
No.
I think he's asking about whether.
That's correct. You begin to lose some friends because you're following Krishna consciousness and they don't agree with it.
Yeah, so those some of them.
Yeah. So some people get, very, very distressed if that happens. And they think, oh, maybe it's a bad choice I made by taking up Krishna consciousness. I'm losing all these good friends that I have, or relatives also. And but then if they see that you've become a better person by becoming Krishna conscious, then they can change their opinion.
Yeah.
If you're a fanatical devotee, always trying to force them to be Krishna conscious, then they really dislike you. And they'll say, you're under the control of these Hare Krishnas. But if your behavior is even better than what it was before, and you're very kind and not forcing people to be Krishna conscious, then they might ask you, say, well, you've changed a lot, but in a good way. And maybe tell me something about this Hare Krishna stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what you want. That's where you want to get to that point where they see that you're become a much better person than you were before. And they might ask, what is this all about? Yeah. Haribol, Haribol. All grace to see your
Prabhupada ki jai. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, on that, Maharaj, I wanted to, I'm just, it's not a comment. My personal experience I'm saying is, I'm being rather tolerant towards a non-devotees attitude, but I'm becoming more intolerant towards devotees attitude. If I see something doesn't work, then I'm getting really agitated. So where am I going wrong?
I didn't understand.
So she has become more tolerant to the non-devotee behavior because she understands that they don't have the knowledge. But she is becoming intolerant with the devotees who are not necessarily having the right behavior that they're supposed to. Is that right?
Yes, yes. You understand really. Yeah, that's what.
So, well,
What do I do there? So I'm not expecting the
yes.
situation to change, but how I can change myself in that situation. If I see some devotee say something which is hurtful to me, but clearly it's wrong, but I'm definitely getting hurtful. I'm not able to convince the person otherwise. So how do I basically convince myself that's okay? Don't get so annoyed with it or something like that.
That's the point. You only associate with those devotees who have good behavior. And you don't actually associate. I mean, you say hello, goodbye, and you stay respectful from a distance, but you associate with those devotees who do have good behavior. So are there devotees that do have good behavior that you can associate here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the ones, are not behaving nicely, you just avoid their association. I mean, you give them respect, you don't argue with them, but you don't really spend a lot of time with them.
So not all devotees, just because they're a devotee, they're all not the same.
It's not like generalizing a person's overall behavior. Maybe certain situation is where I expect the person to understand rather on a more broader properly than accusing or questioning something like that. Particular situation I'm saying, not like I could judge that person is totally bad because that behavior, that particular situation I couldn't tolerate it. So it's not like that. I'm thinking in those kind of situation which is making me think why is such an elevated devotee, but why they are behaving in such and such way. So I have to basically, I'm thinking that way. What can I do to myself, like, so that I don't get agitated or
Well, there's two things you can do. One, be very kind and tolerate whatever they're doing that disturbs you. And two, pray for them. Prayer is very powerful if it's sincere prayer. It's very powerful. It can influence other people when you pray to Krishna to help them. Try it.
yes, I think that answer, Maharaj.
You have an experiment. You pray for someone who is, let's say, not acting properly in your estimation. You pray to Krishna to help that person become a better devotee. Okay?
Yes,
Prayer is very, very powerful. And you have to take refuge in prayer, especially when you're praying for the welfare of others. Krishna will help you. And you'll feel much better because you're not focusing on the, let's say, the negative parts, the negative behavior of the person. You're praying for them to become a better person. And you're praying to Krishna, please help this person. So it's a positive thing. Whereas if you're just upset by this person's behavior, you get you're upset. In other words, it's affecting you and it's ruining your Krishna consciousness. But if you pray for the people that, that are, that previously were upsetting you, then you're not upset with them anymore, because what you're doing is a good thing. You're praying to Krishna for their welfare.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Haribol.
Anyone else?
I want to say, when I became a devotee, my children, they became like afraid of me. Like they would just sit there and stare at me, and they really didn't want anything to do with me.
So your question?
Yeah, I want to know why. Like, why? I don't understand why they act like that.
Well, because they think that, you're not their mom anymore, that you're somebody else, like a stranger. So sometimes you have to hide your Krishna consciousness so that your close family members do not get freaked out. Let's put it like that. And you have to be very patient. So if they see eventually that you're Krishna conscious, they know you're Krishna conscious, but you're not trying to preach to them or anything like that. But they see that you became a better person, which is definitely going to happen by being Krishna consciousness. Eventually, they will accept you. In the beginning, they will not accept. So so therefore, you have to sort of keep it a secret that you're Krishna conscious, or not let them see too much that you're Krishna conscious. But your patience, your tolerance has increased because you have because you have this very intimate relationship with Krishna now. And because of that, you can tolerate more, you can be more patient, you can be more kind, you can be more giving, you can be more loving, and so forth. So eventually they'll think, wow, mommy has changed. And she's, much more, loving than before. And they'll be happy. You'll be happy without having to preach or say anything, specific about Krishna. They'll eventually become inquisitive about your let's say, more intense loving and kindness and patience. Especially patience is very important, and tolerance very important, especially if your kids are teenagers. You have to be extremely tolerant, because you can see them walking off a cliff, and it's hard to not say anything when they're doing that. But you have to have faith in prasadam. You have to have faith in praying for the welfare of others. And you have to be patient. Now, why do people, develop bad habits? Because they have bad associations. So somehow or other, you have to do something to stop that bad association. And that's not easy. Sometimes you might have to do something radical, like move away, so that they lose those bad friends that they developed, in order to save them from, completely going off the rails. So, yeah, but the main thing is to be very tolerant and always kind, and always offering the food to Krishna first, and then offering it with love and devotion, and then offering that to your kids. So if you're always giving them really nice prasadam and having the family table at dinner, and trying to do fun things with the kids, so they see something happen, that you're much more relaxed, you don't get angry, even when they do something nonsense. And you speak to them always with sweet words. In other words, you're controlling your anger, knowing that it's only going to make things worse, and being very patient and praying all the time to Krishna. Please help these kids. Please, my Lord. You're the only one that can do something. I can't do anything anymore. They got to be teenagers and they're not really listening to me anymore. So you please do something. So, yeah, it's not easy to raise kids nowadays. And it's mostly our fault because we're putting them in these schools where they come into contact with all kinds of nonsense things nowadays. So it's much better to homeschool your kids, not let them have, and then find other mothers that want to homeschool their kids. And then you work together in a little group, maybe 3 or 4 mothers that are homeschooling their kids. So the kids they don't say, well, I don't have any friends anymore. And I feel isolated. So now there's, 3, 4, 5 families and kids from those families that are being educated, home educated, and together, let's say, and now they have friends again. That's the worst thing for a kid, as soon as they become close to being a teenager, to not have friends, or to be forced to give up the friends that they made outside, and now they have to stay at home and be educated, homeschooling, and they feel really upset because they don't have friends. So you have to make some acquaintances with other moms that they're homeschooling their kids, and have a group homeschooling, so your kids don't feel as if you're forcing them to give up their friendship. Kids have to have friends. They have to have some friends. But if you can make sure those friends are good friends, and that their families have the same type of desires that you do to raise your kids to be nice devotees and so forth, or at least believing in God, then the kids will be okay. But if you take them away from their friends and they're at home alone with you and you're trying to educate them, it's very difficult. Very, very difficult for the kid.
Any other questions or follow-up, Mataji?
No, that's good.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. All glory